To understand Paul's mission to Corinth, imagine an ancient city combining the massive wealth of Wall Street with the raw vice of Las Vegas. This map of the Roman Empire shows exactly why the city was so powerful. Look right here at the Greek Isthmus. Every major trade route between the Aegean and Adriatic seas funneled directly through Corinth's dual seaports. If you walked through the eastern port of Cenchrea, you would be standing at a massive global gateway. It was packed with merchants, sailors, and goods from every corner of the known world. But with that international wealth came extreme moral decay. The culture was so notoriously corrupt that the Greeks actually coined a term for it, Corinthiazisthai. To act like a Corinthian literally meant to live in debauchery. And looming over the streets were massive centers of pagan worship. The towering columns of the Temple of Apollo and the sprawling shrines to Aphrodite dominated the skyline, making the city's devotion to these gods physically intimidating. Before arriving here, Paul had tried preaching in Athens. Standing on the rocky outcrop of Mars Hill, he had used complex philosophical debates to reach the cultural elite, but saw very little success. He arrived in Corinth alone, exhausted, and by his own admission, deeply afraid. So how could one isolated missionary possibly plant a pure Christian church in an urban hub ruled completely by money, pride, and idolatry? Paul's solution was entirely counterintuitive. Instead of seeking out wealthy patrons to fund his ministry, he deliberately chose to support himself by working as a common manual laborer. This diagram of first-century Roman society illustrates what a radical choice that was. You have a tiny, incredibly wealthy elite at the very top, and a massive foundation of slaves, freedmen, and laborers at the bottom. To the Roman elite, manual labor was considered slavish and utterly shameful. Yet Paul intentionally dropped down the social ladder. By working as a skenopoios, a leather worker or tent maker, he kept himself completely free from the tangled web of Roman patronage obligations. He surrendered his scholarly privilege so he could identify directly with the lowest classes. This meant spending his days hunched over in a dirty, noisy, and potentially dangerous artisan's workshop. But because these shops were clustered right next to the town market, Paul was guaranteed constant daily interaction with a massive cross-section of the public. He also completely overhauled his message. He stripped away the lofty philosophical arguments he had tried in Athens, choosing to focus exclusively and relentlessly on one simple truth: Jesus Christ and Him crucified. This two-pronged strategy of economic humility and total theological clarity worked. Paul successfully formed a thriving church that actually crossed Corinth's rigid social boundaries. Because he was constantly engaged in the civic center, his working-class ministry eventually captured the attention of high-status individuals, including Crispus, a synagogue leader, and Erastus, the city treasurer. We have the physical evidence of this civic environment. This artifact shows the actual stone inscription bearing the name of Erastus, alongside the bema, the city's official judgment seat. This proves that Paul's message penetrated the highest levels of Corinthian administration. God explicitly validated this exhausting urban strategy. During a night vision, he told Paul to not be afraid and to keep speaking, assuring him that God had many people in this city. Paul successfully planted a church in the strategic center of the Roman Empire. He didn't rely on wealth, elite status, or towering rhetoric, but rather the extreme humility of a tent maker and the radically unifying power of the cross. But that initial success was quickly threatened by a severe internal crisis. The new converts began bringing the toxic, secular culture of Corinth directly into the church. The cultural bleed was widespread. Church members were dividing along class lines during the Lord's Supper. The wealthy were suing the poor in secular Roman courts, and some were even casually participating in pagan temple feasts. The Roman obsession with status, honor, and rhetoric caused the congregation to fracture. Instead of unifying under Christ, members started aligning themselves behind specific charismatic leaders, claiming loyalty to Apollos, Cephas, or Paul. Paul responded forcefully from afar. He wrote 1st and 2nd Corinthians to act as a direct theological antidote to these specific cultural toxins. This matrix breaks down Paul's core argument. He systematically addresses division, immorality, and idolatry, striking down the idea that a Christian identity could be built on social status or intellectual pride. Instead, he replaced them with unity, purity, and love, grounding the church in Christ's sacrifice. To solve the leadership crisis, Paul pointed to servant-hearted models like the household of Stephanas, recommending their collegial, community-focused leadership to replace competitive factionalism. The letters to the Corinthians offer a blueprint for modern urban missions. Just as Paul leveraged his secular trade to infiltrate the corrupt urban center of his day, modern believers can use their own secular vocations to engage the world. The goal is to maintain a steadfast, pure Christian identity that transforms the city without being transformed by it.